Hi boys and girls. Today in algebra class, we're going to learn about using letters and about finding totals and parts. So let's start. In this first question, you'll notice it says 25 equals 5 times W. You can use letters instead of a box. We are used to seeing 25 equals 5 times unknown number or box, but you're allowed to use a letter, and they often do in algebra. So 25 equals 5 times W. What is W? Well, it has to be 5. And so underneath I put this. W is equal to 5, or unknown number is equal to 5. Next one, they've got A, or unknown number, equals 6 times 3. What is the unknown number? Well, 6 times 3 equals to 18. So that's how we use letters in our algebra. All right, now we're going to look at some equations. There are 5 green apples and 7 red apples. How many apples are there in total? And you know that key word total means to add everything together. Another word we often use is all together. And so when we look at that, total is like adding part 1, which is 5 green, and part 2, which is 7 red. And you know that 5 plus 7 equals 12 total. And you could write it like 5 plus 7 equals 12, just flipped from the normal way we write an equation. Today we're also going to learn to write it like this. We're going to learn to put a total on the top of this rectangle, and on the bottom we're going to have a part 1 and a part 2. In this example that we just did, the total is added up after we know part 1 is 5 apples and part 2 is 7 apples. We add it up and we get a total of 12 apples. All right, let's investigate this some more. This time, they're going to give us only part 1. There are 5 green apples and W, unknown red apples. There are 12 apples in total. How many red apples are there? And so we need to think about this new way they want us to organize our information. On the top goes the total. There are a total of 12 apples. There are 5 green. That's my part 1. I know there's 5 green, but part 2, I don't know how many red. I could put a question mark, but they put a W, so we'll put a W. How do I solve that? Well, if you're thinking about how to make an equation, you could say part 1 equals the total minus part 2, or part 2 equals the total minus part 1. And this one makes it easiest for us to say the missing unknown number W is equal to the total, 12, minus 5, and the missing number must be equal to 7. Okay, we'll keep practicing this. Again, here is the new method of writing this total with part 1 and part 2 in the equations we're doing in algebra today. So here's an example. Let's say there were 10 kids playing outside. 4 were boys and 6 were girls, 10 students altogether. So how do I find that total? Well, I add part 1 and part 2. If part 1 was missing, I could take the total and subtract part 2. Or if part 2 was missing, I could take the total and subtract part 1. There's different methods to solve when you have a missing part. Okay, in this example, the value of the total is unknown. We don't know the total, but we could figure it out. If there were 5 Mars bars and 4 Kit Kats, how many chocolate bars all together? Well, all we would have to do is add this and this. So we would add 5 plus 4, and we would get to 9 chocolate bars. But if part 1 was missing and we knew the total, we could say 5, or I'm sorry, with what we have, what we could write is part 1 is 5 equals the total minus 4, or we could write part 2, 4 equals the total minus 5. When I look at those three equations, the one that I can solve the fastest and easiest is knowing that my total is part 1 plus part 2 added together to make my total, and I can solve that right away. These other ones I would find a little too tricky. I would use the strategy of adding both my small numbers to get my big number. All right, so knowing what we know, how can we solve this? If there is a total of 11 and there's a missing number or an unknown, we call it k in this case, and 9, what is the missing one? Well, we can take the total and subtract one of the small numbers and find out that the missing number k is 2. And that is solving that equation. Again, another example. I've got my total and I've got part 1 and part 2. I can take my total and subtract one of the small numbers to solve the missing unknown number, which is called t. 20 minus 13 is 7. T equals 7. And you can write 7 equals t, and you can write it this way. T equals to 7. All right. Hopefully these examples are starting to help you understand. Let's try some more. Oops. All right, let's look at this one, A, 2A. I've got a total, but it's missing, it's W. And my total equals part 1 plus part 2. So I now know that my total is 8 plus 2, so W equals 10. Total equals 10 or W equals 10. In B, I've got a total of 16. I'm missing one small number and I've got 11. I'm going to take my total, in this case, and subtract one of my small numbers in order to find the other small missing number, and that is 5. W equals 5. And always check that it makes sense. Does this make sense? Does 5 plus 11 equal 16? Yes, it does. It makes sense. I'm doing all right. How about the bonus for those of you that are loving this algebra? W plus 75 equals the total of 100. I could write it that way, but it might be easier to use the strategy of take my total, subtract one of the small numbers. Uh-oh, I just gave away the answer in the top part. You didn't see that. W plus 75 equals 100. And the way you could solve for W is 100 minus 75 equals W. And you probably did see W equals to 25. Okay, good. Now, today you will see a chart in your workbook, and it looks similar to this. So they're going to use some examples about grapes. Here's what they're doing. In this, some of the information is missing. So you'll fill in 2 of the boxes and then find out the missing box. In this example A, I have 3 green grapes. Write it down. I have 2 purple grapes. So what am I missing? I'm missing the total. And to find the total, I simply add 3 plus 2 is 5. Here, in B, there's 7 green grapes. There's 9 grapes all together. All together means it's my big number, my total or all together. It's missing a small number. 7 plus what equals 9? Or 9 minus 7 equals what? And you're going to find out the missing number is 2. So these are the kind of questions that will be in your workbook today. Okay, just similar to this. Okay, there'll also be some word problems in your workbook today, and we're just going to do one from each of these pages. So let's look at A. There are 6 red marbles. There are X blue marbles. There are 11 marbles in total. If you want to draw the chart the way they're used to drawing it, you could put total, which is 11, and underneath there's 6 red, and the other part is X blue. How many are blue? So you can then write beside it 11 minus 6 equals X. 11 minus 6 is what? 5. So X equals 5. The missing number of blue marbles is 5. Okay, and we'll try another example. Okay, the hockey card one. There are 5 hockey cards. There are X sports cards all together. There are 7 cards that are not hockey cards. Okay, I saw the word all together. That's like total. There are X cards all together. I don't know how many there are all together. I know there's 5 that are hockey cards, and I know that there's 7 that are not hockey cards. How many cards are there all together? I need to add X equals 5 plus 7, and you know that 5 plus 7 equals 12. So you've just solved it. You could have done it in your head, but this is showing you how to use algebra. So good work today. Go back to DAX and find out your assignment. Have fun.